How do you prevent all of your content being re-recorded? We all know that when we create video content of any kind, there are tons of variables that can go wrong. That includes things like cameras not working, microphones turning off halfway through, guests running amok with conversation topics that you didn't ask them to talk about. There are a million and one different ways that things can go wrong. I'm a big fan of helping add some structure to that. And I think there are lots of people who start out with the right intentions. And I've always said that done is better than perfect. And I completely stand behind that. However, gets to a point where if you want to be effective and efficient with your content, you need to start planning a little bit. And by that, I'm an ADHD person. I hate planning things. So when I say planning, I really do mean minimum sort of content that goes into that. So think of it in this way. If there was a bullet point list that you could send to somebody you were recording with, so if you got a co-host for the episode, the video, or the webinar, whatever it is, or you've got a guest coming along that you want to interview, what can you send them in a bullet pointed email that will give them all the rules and information that they need in order to come on and immediately be in a good place to record? Things like, make sure you've got a strong Wi-Fi connection or a wired connection if possible. Make sure you've got a good quality camera. Make sure that you're wearing, suitable clothing. Make sure that you're sat at the right height for the video. So your eyes should be 2/3 of the way up the video screen. All of these sorts of things. And I would heavily encourage, as we discussed last week, if you've got a guest coming on your podcast or on an interview, that you do their bio for them so they can focus on the questions that are the real value add for your audience. So there's that side of things. But then there's also, for yourself, technical checklist. Now, I find that once I create the checklist, I very rarely go back to it. But the act of creating the checklist is what helps me be more efficient. So I can't count the amount of times I've lost video recordings through microphones not being turned on, through batteries dying halfway through, things not being plugged in where they should, the right options not being selected on my software. All of these things are real problems. And if I have them, I know you will have them as well. So what I'd suggest is create yourself an Excel spreadsheet, a Google Docs spreadsheet, or something similar, or even just write it out on a good old fashioned notepad and pen and write down all the things that have gone wrong previously. So for me, it's things like making sure that these bad boys are fully turned on. You can see the 2 blue lights on them because they take 2 or 3 seconds to turn on. If you don't hold the button long enough, they don't actually turn on. Making sure that before a podcast recording, all of my gear is charged up and labeling what pieces of equipment I need to charge up. So I often use old phones, which are not really serviceable for use as a phone anymore, but as a camera, they're fantastic. So make sure they're charged up, test them, make sure they're working, make sure you've got enough free space on them. All of these little things. And once you've done 2 or 3 of these, you'll not go back to your checklist. But it does help focus you on the sorts of things that you need to be doing to make sure you have as minimal disruption to your recordings as possible. Hands on heart, it happens to all of us. I now record in-person podcasts with 5 or 6 different cameras, mobile phones, webcams, all these sorts of things. Why? Because I can guarantee at least one of them will move during the recording and not be suitable. It'll die. The recording will not output. There's all sorts of reasons, right? It happens to all of us. Build in some redundancy. If what you're producing is high value and can't be re-recorded, or you don't have the time to re-record, make sure you get it right the first time. If you're not sure about what your setup checklist should look like, speak to an expert. Maybe it's worth getting in touch with somebody who knows what they're doing to just ask their opinion. What is it I can be doing? What should I be checking on before I do this to make sure everything's as first time as it can be? Because the question I would put back to you is, if you lost 2 or 3 of these recordings, what's the impact on that for your mental well-being, your time, your marketing outputs, and what else could you have been doing with that time that you could have been putting into other things? Honestly, the amount of times I speak to new clients who come to us and they have already tried to edit their own content and managed it halfway, but not done a great job on it. They know it's not great and they want us to fix it. And at that point, it's probably unfixable because they've saved over the top of original editions, original versions, and we're trying to work with half-edited video footage. It's not fun for us, and it's certainly not fun for you. So just make sure that you put a lot of thought into it beforehand, especially if you're going to be doing it regularly, so that you can minimize these disruptions. If you're unsure, drop me a line. Love to chat. Always got time to speak with people who are setting up their own content, give you the best practice advice, because I'm a big believer that if you can do it yourself, you should be. So feel free to reach out, and I will see you next week on the Content Classroom. Bye-bye.